Starting gallery here.
To close it and start over.
All right, good morning, everyone. We should start soon. We're just waiting for it.
All right, I've got a webinar starting now that I need to get on to. Okay, later.
We should start soon. I'm just waiting for a few seconds, okay? We're just waiting for a few more delegates. So I'm just going to give it about 5 minutes, and then around 10 past 11 we'll start. And I just ask everyone to please mute their mics during the session. There is a chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. So should you have any questions or comments or anything that you'd like to relay, please just type it in the chat box and we'll address them accordingly. Okay, I'm just going to give it another 3 minutes, last 3 minutes, just giving people a chance to log in, and then we will start exactly at 10 past 11. Apologies for that.
So it's good that starting at 10 past. Okay, we're going to start 10 past.
All right, good morning, everyone. As promised, 10 past 11. I think I'll keep admitting people as we proceed, but welcome to our Employment Equity Coaching webinar. My name is Amalia, and I am representing HR and Skills Market. We are a team of HR specialists specializing in employment equity, skills development, labor, and anything HR related. And today we will be just coaching all our attendees on EE, the process, the changes, and should anybody have any questions, there is a chat box on the right hand side of the screen. You can type in your questions there and we will answer them as we go. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen so that everybody can have a view of the presentation that we'll be going through. And yeah, let us resume. Okay, perfect. Right. So employment equity, okay, we're just going to run through the agenda that we will be covering through the training. We're going to be going through the meaning of employment equity in the workplace. We're going to run through the overview of the latest employment equity regulations. As all of you know, there has been an amendment to the employment equity bill that was released on the 20th of July. So we'll also run through a few of those changes if there are any questions. The entire employment equity process, we can split it into three, which is preparation, implementation, and monitoring. So we'll run through the roles and the responsibilities of the Employment Equity Forum, employment of people with disabilities, and under implementation, we'll run through the affirmative action measured and the specified timeframes and resources. And then under monitoring, we will then run through the employment equity documentation that is compulsory for your employment equity process, together with developing and analyzing your EE plan. And then we'll also go through the EA4 reporting requirements and any additional amendments to the Act. Can everybody see the screen that I'm sharing? Okay, thank you, Elsa. I'm just fixing that quickly. And can everybody see the screen now? Okay, perfect. Okay, so that's the agenda that I was running through. Agenda 1 to item 1 to 13. That's what we will be running through today. Okay. So let's start off with the meaning of employment equity in the workplace. Employment Equity Act was put in place to achieve equity in the workplace by promoting equal opportunity and fair treatment in employment through elimination of unfair discrimination and implementing affirmative action measures to redress the advantages that were previously experienced by designated groups to ensure equitable representation in all occupational categories of the workforce. So in essence, the Employment Equity Act is there to govern the workplace. Okay, so we can't take this act and try and apply it outside the workplace. For instances, outside the workplace, there are acts such as the human rights. Okay, so that's the beauty about the South African legislation or the law. It's harmonious. They speak to each other in order to implement transformation and move us from, from one height to a greater height. So basically, the Employment Equity Act legislation was put in place to govern the workplace to be able to adjust and bridge gaps where there are gaps in the employment sector. So if I were to describe employment equity in a picture, what we see on the screen defines it purely. Okay, so equality means we put everyone on the same scale and we give everyone the same opportunity, which if we look at the picture here, giving everyone the same opportunity doesn't necessarily assist everyone in having a view if it's a view that we're trying to achieve. But then if we apply equity, if you look at the picture in the middle, the one person doesn't need that boost, which doesn't necessarily mean that we would deem them any less than other employees, but the second employee would need probably one crate to stand on, but the third employee whom had no view at all with assistance is able to have the same view as everyone. And ultimately, if we look at the third picture, that describes what the Employment Equity Act aims to achieve. It aims to remove any barriers that there may be in the workplace so that everybody can have equal then opportunity and equal view, and we can have a harmonious and barrierless then workforce. Okay, so if we were to describe employment equity, that picture speaks to what the Act aims to address. Okay, so then we'll move on to the thresholds. So every company falls into one of the listed sectors, and if your company meets then or exceeds the threshold listed, then you have to comply with the Employment Equity Act. Okay, so agriculture 6 million, mining 22.50, manufacturing and electricity, so all your MERS eaters is 30 million, your construction 15, retail, wholesale, catering, transport, finance, and personal services listed as well. So these thresholds haven't changed. Any company that exceeds the current listed threshold then has to comply with employment equity. Now we know there are there were previously 3 grounds to comply with employment equity, which was 1, threshold, 2, number of staff, and 3 was the voluntary aspect. So if you apply for tenders or triple BE, then that would be your 3rd bar to comply with employment equity. Okay, so now with the amendment bill, there has been a bit of an adjustment with regards to those 3, but for now, 50 or more staff members, the threshold of what you need to have in place in order to fully comply with the Employment Equity Act. Okay. All right, so as mentioned, the employment equity regulation, if we're to sum it up, is basically preparation, implementation, and monitoring. So we're going to run through from step 1 to step 10, the entire process that you need to comply with in order to comply fully with the EE Act. Okay, so step 1, you need to assign a responsibility. Okay, so assigning responsibility starts with management appointing an EE manager to be able to facilitate and run the whole process. Okay, so your EE manager should be a permanent employee. Ideally report directly to the CEO, for your EE manager is like the middleman between the employees and management. So they should report directly to CEO and fully understand and drive the entire employment equity process internally. Okay, so you need somebody preferably in senior management that will be able to run with the entire process. Okay, then you also need to assign a forum. Okay, so your forum should be elected through a ballot system. Okay, so issuing ballot forms to your staff, getting them to nominate preferably a person from each department, a person representing each ethnic group, and then representing each occupational level as well. Okay, so in essence, by the time you have fully completed the nomination process, you should have equal representation of your ethnic groups together with your occupational levels. And if you have disabled people, they would form part of that forum as well. And if you have members of a trade union, then they would form part of your forum. Okay, and your forum members need to sign acceptance forms, accepting to be part of the forum, and then a confidentiality agreement, because some of the issues that are discussed in the forum require confidentiality until you've received approval to actually execute and attend to a specific barrier. Okay, so once you've assigned responsibility, you move on to step 2, which is communication, awareness, and training. All employees should be informed of the content of the EE Act. They need to be sensitized with regards to the Employment Equity Act and anti-discrimination issues. They need to be informed regarding the process that needs to be followed. They need to understand the importance of their participation in the process, because this process is also about them as well. And they need to be made aware of the need to participate. Participation from all stakeholders. Okay, so everybody in your company basically needs to be informed of the EE process and what needs to be done, not just to the people that are elected, but the entire company needs to be informed. So that's where your communication and awareness comes in. Okay, your managers, your EE managers should be informed of their obligations. So an EE manager also has a criteria that they need to follow, and then they need to be offered training in diversity management and related skills, because they're dealing with different people that face different challenges. So they need to be diverse in the way they attend to the matters. And they need to understand that discrimination can be indirect, or as a result of inaction or victimization. Okay, there are various means that you can communicate, give awareness and training. You can do this via pamphlets, newsletters, workshop videos, as we're doing today, and training sessions. Okay, just to spread out communication and awareness. Okay, and then we move on to the next slide, legal duty to inform employees. In terms of Section 25 of the Act, an employer must display the Act, so that could be in the form of legislative posters. So you need to legally, it's a legal duty to inform your employees of whatever is going on throughout the employment equity process. So if there's going to be an employment equity meeting, it's your duty to inform the entire staff complement that we are going to have a meeting. So if you've got any issues, then you bring them forth to the EE forum representatives prior to the meeting. So it's a legal duty to inform. Okay, so for example, if an inspector were to walk into your company tomorrow, they have the right to interview any of your staff members to try and ensure that that part of the act, which is communication, is being adhered to. So it's a legal duty to inform all your employees. It's not a secret process. Okay, step 3, which is a very important step or element in the process, is consultation. Now, consultation needs to start as early as possible. So if we looked at the steps, the employment equity steps, step 10 is reporting. And that's where a lot of companies start. A lot of companies start by reporting to the Department of Labor without having communicated or consulted. However, step 3, which is consultation, advises you to start the process as early as possible. How should this happen? You establish your forum, as mentioned in step 2. Then you need to have your regular quarterly employment equity forum meetings. Okay, and then your deliberations need to be properly recorded. You need to have an attendance register every time you have a meeting, and you need to record meeting minutes. Okay, so one of the grounds for a fine is not complying fully with Section 16 and 17, and most of the time you find the Department of Labor stating that the issues discussed in the minutes do not relate to EE. Hence, it's very important to record properly all the deliberations regarding EE. Okay, who should be taken into consideration with regards to consultation? As mentioned, you need your trade union if you have one. You need your designated group, your non-designated group, and all occupational categories and levels. Okay, so senior management, including managers assigned with the responsibility. Okay, step 4 relates to analysis, which speaks to Section 19 of the Employment Equity Act. Okay, so you need to analyze your employment policies, procedures, and your practices in order to identify any barriers that may exist. Okay, so you need to do the analysis to contribute to the underrepresentation and underutilization of employees from designated groups. If you do not analyze your policies, your procedures, and your practices, you won't be able to establish whether there is a gap and underrepresentation or underutilization of your staff. Okay, analysis will also help to contribute to the lack of affirmation of diversity in the workplace that adversely affects your designated groups. Okay, it'll also help you to identify practices or factors that positively promote employment equity and diversity in the workplace. So your analysis will not only highlight where the gaps are, but it'll also help you to highlight where the company is doing well in terms of diversity in your workplace. Okay, your analysis will also then need to be reviewed. Okay, so you need to review, for example, your recruitment procedures, your selection procedures, your induction. You need to review if you have a policy for recruitment, if you have a procedure in place, or if you have a practice. Because if you've got a policy, it's all good and well. If you've got a procedure, it's all good and well. But if you don't practice what your policy and your procedure says, then recruitment is automatically a barrier. So you need to ensure that when analyzing all of your policies, we need to ensure that there is a procedure, a policy, and a practice as well. Okay, so you need to also review practices related to succession and experience planning, relating to promotions and transfers. You should also review utilization and job assignments, current training and develop methodologies and strategies, and access to training together with remuneration structures and practices. So all of these will be identified by your analysis process. So if you have a barrier in recruitment, in training, in remuneration, in your disciplinary code, all of these will be picked up through your analysis. Okay. And how do you establish a workforce profile? You need to run an exercise of collating EEA1s. So you need to hand each staff member EEA1 form, which is one of the compliant documentation provided by the Department of Labor. EEA1 form allows you to get the name, the gender, the ethnic group, and that is an opportunity for an employee to declare whether they are disabled or not. Okay, so if you have those forms and you have those demographics and those statistics, those will help you to work with an accurate workforce profile. Okay, so if you, and you don't have to constantly update your EA1 form. Once you've completed that exercise, you can keep it in file, unless if the information of the employee changes, then you would need to redo the exercise. However, if you run the EA1 form, that is one tool that helps or assists the company in collating an accurate workforce profile. Okay, and the third point, if employers have alternative reliable resources to source this information. So for example, if you've got employee files with all the employees' information, then that can suffice as a form that you can use in aid of an EA1 to get the workforce profile together. Okay. And then step 5 of the Act speaks to then affirmative action. So if as a company you have established your forum, so you've done the whole preparation process and you've consulted, and now that you're analyzing, so analysis will then help you to identify whether there's a gap or not. And then that's where affirmative action comes in. Now, affirmative action is one of the terms that have been just misunderstood in terms of their definition. Affirmative action does not mean strikes or, you know, employees take unnecessary action to ensure that something is attended to. Affirmative action is a way of making the workplace more representative and fair. So affirmative action is a measure that you put in place to achieve a certain barrier that you've identified. It makes sure that qualified people from designated groups have equal opportunities in the workplace. Okay, in South Africa, these groups, now I'm referring to the designated groups, are Black people, including Black, Colored, and Indian people, and women and people with disabilities. Designated employers are not required to take any action regarding employment policy or practice that would establish an absolute barrier to prospective or continued employment or advancement of people not from designated groups. So the Employment Equity Act does not discriminate of anyone that is outside of the designated groups, but affirmative action then helps us to be able to address the gaps that are identified. Okay, and how do you go about setting goals and objectives in terms of drafting your employment equity plan or your qualitative analysis? You work with a snapshot of the organization profile 12 months prior to when you're starting the process. So you need to know what the company looks like, has looked like in the past 12 months. That's your starting point. Then that will be a building block to then now designing your plan. Be it a 1 year to 5 year plan, that will be your starting point. And then an understanding of which practices or working conditions affect members of the designated group that you would have established from your analysis. Okay, retention, development training of designated groups, and preferential treatment and numerical goals to ensure equitable representation, which excludes quotas. So in essence, it's a flowing process from your preparation, getting the right bodies in place to be able to facilitate the entire process. Then once you have those bodies being your e-forum and your e-manager, then what you do is you start communicating the process to all the staff and all the stakeholders involved. 3, you consult. You try and establish where the gaps are through your analysis. And then once you've identified what gaps there are, then you then implement affirmative measures and time frames, which we will address as we proceed with the presentation, to be able to address whatever barriers they are. Okay, so now we're going to move on to step 6 of the process, which speaks to time frames. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Vicky. I'm from HR and Skills Markets. I'm Amalia's colleague, so I'll be taking it further on from step 6. Is everyone still good? Okay, I'm assuming everyone is still good. Okay, moving on to step 6, we see that the duration of the EA3 plan requires us to have a plan anything from 1 to 5 years. Okay, so let me just check here quickly for you. Okay, employers should decide on the duration of their plans given the particular circumstances at the time frame, which can have a meaningful progress going forward. It should specify your milestones and target dates set for each to be reached. You'll see that when you do the EA13 plan, there are specific forms that need to be completed, selecting your start date and end date of when a barrier will be achieved. Step 7, your resources. With employment equity, you have budget that should be appropriately allocated in order to implement all the agreed components, such as your trainings that needs to be done, any posters that need to be brought forward, your HIV/AIDS awareness packs, those will all fit into your budgets. People such as your managers assigned responsibility, your employment equity manager, time off for stakeholders involved in the process, your management and employee forum, infrastructure such as project office or meeting room. Okay, during COVID-19, it's been a bit difficult. So if you don't have enough space in your meeting rooms, you can always stand outside a meter apart. And if that doesn't work, You can have your training and information via Zoom, Teams, anyone that works for you. Okay. Any other resources that might be appropriate? When communicating the plan, it should inform stakeholders who is responsible for the implementation of the plan. You'll see in the EA 13, when you look at remuneration and benefits, the responsibility is placed on the HR and the financial management, whereas when you do awareness, it's based on the forum and the EE manager. Where information regarding the plan can be obtained, it needs to be in your employment equity file with the EE manager, okay, where everyone has access to. Objectives and duration of the plan, like we said, what targets you need to reach, what outcomes you need from them, what actions need to be taken, and the duration of the plan, anything from 1 to 5 years. Roles and responsibilities of all stakeholders, from management to your forum, okay, and a dispute resolution procedure. This needs to be a clear procedure followed to resolve employment equity disputes from the interpretation and implementation of the plan, including the people responsible and timeframes. For example, if we have an employment equity dispute, it needs to be taken to the employment equity forum, or alternatively, the employment equity manager, and depending on your procedures, you can give it about 10 days of a time frame to be sorted out, and then moving on to the next level, which would be management. Step 9 is monitoring and evaluation of the plan. All employers should implement mechanisms to monitor and evaluate the implementation of the plan. To evaluate the progress as structured on regular intervals, reporting on the progress to consultative forum and all stakeholders. Whatever is discussed in your employment equity meetings needs to be taken to management as well, if anything needs to be addressed. Reviewing and revising the plan through the consultation process. And what we've done here for you is we've tried to make a little list that makes it easier for you to see that employers need 12 documents in their file, which is appointing your employment equity manager, nomination forms, acceptance and the non-disclosure forms, which is the confidentialities, your meeting minutes and attendance registers, an employment equity constitution, an EA1 form of employee disability declaration, your EA12 form, which is the qualitative analysis, EA13, your plan, EA2, which is the report submitted to the Director General, excluding the EA4. We exclude the EA4 in the plan, reason being is it looks at the remuneration. If your employees and your forum have access to that file, they'll see the remunerations, which could cause harm to any other employees or the company itself. Your letter of good standing from compensation fund, your UIF certificate. Okay, is there chat?
What is the non-disclosure?
Okay, there's a question here. What is the NDA cover in the process not supposed to be transparent? Okay, so the non-disclosure form is the confidentiality form. When we speak about the confidentiality is to say that should wages come up in the discussion, that it does not be addressed directly with that person's wages or any of the employees in the forum, as well as if the forum brings forward, I'm going to use a very small example, saying that we want a year-end function, but we want to go out and have a bra. Okay, that we don't just discuss it in the meeting and say, yes, we'll have a bra, everything will be paid for. It's a go ahead. And then when management says that they can't actually fit it into their budget, then it was displayed to all other employees. Okay. This causes friction in your employees and your forum now, because now your forum has essentially lied to their colleagues and thus they won't be trusted with any other issues. Confidentiality also talks about when you need unions in your meetings. They bring up retrenchments or wages discussions, anything like that. It is a confidentiality forum just to protect that anything that is discussed is not set in stone. Management does have the last say. Okay, so it's not that we are not transparent, it's just a few things that need to be, the forum needs to be considerate of management decisions as well. Okay, your UI 56 certificate, which is a certificate that UIF gives to you, saying that you are part of UIF, you pay them and you have registered with them. And then lastly, it's your skills development submission report, which is done annually in April to your relevant sector based on the sector you are in. So the sectors will form part of these listed as well. Your agricultural or mining or manufacturing. Step 10 is reporting. This is the final step of the process, not the first step, which is section 20. The forms are Department of Labor forms. It's an EA2 form, which is based on the statistics of your employee workforce, based on their occupational levels, everything from top management all the way to unskilled, and based on any forms that happen. There's been any terminations, promotions, or new members, as well as how many employees have been trained for employment equity purposes. Your income differential statement is an EA4, which is based on the remunerations of employees for the last year. They work on an annual timeline. Okay. Areas for non-compliance when audited by Department of Labor. So these are all the sections that Department of Labor looks at when a company is audited to be compliant. Okay, section 16 and 17, remember that's the consultation process with your forum and all employees. Section 19, the EA12 analysis. Section 20, your employment equity plan. Section 22, publication of your EA2 report. Section 24, designated employer must assign an employment equity manager. 25, duty to inform all employees, whether it's your poster or an EA3 summary put up in your workplace. 26, duty to keep record of this act, which is your employment equity file. If an employer fails to comply with any undertaking, the Director General may apply to the Labour Court to make such an undertaking. We've given you just a picture of the contraventions, the fines that's given by Department of Labor should you not comply with any of the acts. Okay. What will happen is they will either look at a 1.5 or 2% of the employer's turnover if there were no previous fines before. Okay, should the company receive a fine this year and next year we still do not comply, the fine will increase to 1.8 or 4% of the employee's turnover. Okay, so you see that this is quite a serious procedure that needs to be followed. As per 1st of September 2019, Department of Labor gazetted new EA4 reporting requirements. So the remuneration is now split into two sections, which is your fixed guaranteed remuneration as well as your variable remuneration. The fixed is based on your salaries, okay, which includes this year your TERS payments. The second part of fixed is benefits, medical, provident fund, travel allowance, self-allowance, etc. As well as the guaranteed 13 check. Okay. The second part is your variable, which is overtime, commissions, and performances. The exclusions will be any other cash payments. So if it's a petty cash payments or anything like that. Okay, these are the additional amendments added to the Employment Equity Act. The Employment Equity Act links to all of these codes of good practices, being that the preparation, the monitoring, integrating your EE policies, sexual harassment, disability in the workplace, employment equity plans, equal work for equal pay, HIV/AIDS, as well as the newest amendment bill. Okay, all of these can be found on the Department of Labour website. Okay, I hope everyone understood that. So we're going to open the questions and answer session. If you have any questions, you can either type it or you can just ask your question. Okay, I see there is one in the chat box. Does a designated employer determined by the threshold? Yes. If you are over the threshold or over 50 employees, you are a designated employer. Are there any other questions? You can unmute by all means.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, you're speaking to Temba.
Yes,
I have a
Timba.
question. Why would sexual harassment be part of employment equity? Isn't that just what you call something that belongs to a transgression of that sort, as opposed to how to balance? My question is, I'm trying to figure out how would sexual harassment fit into what you call employment equity space, as opposed to taking it to a transgression space. If my question makes sense, I don't know.
It's very clear, Timba. I think
Okay.
as mentioned previously in the analyzing or the consultation process, remember, discrimination can be direct or indirect, and sexual harassment is therefore a result of discrimination against both genders, or the 40 plus new genders that we find ourselves living with in today's age. Therefore, it does become part of your employment equity, or is covered by the Act as well, much as disability is, much as other diseases and infections are. It forms part of employment equity because it can come up as a discrimination element in your workplace. Therefore, it should actually be covered by all legislation in order to just address that area.
Oh yes, now I think I now understand. Discrimination is a key word here.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yes, now I understand. If you use that, then it's understandable. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question. Will we be able to obtain a recording of this presentation? Yes, it will be on our YouTube page. We will send you the link through. There's the next question. So Lisiwe says, who is responsible for completing the EA4? That would either be your accountant or your STF, who you have appointed to run your employment equity process. So when you do your EA2 submission, it's automatic that you do the EA4 as well. Okay, the system does open on the 1st of September or the 1st of October for submissions. You just need to keep an eye on that. And the deadline is the 15th of January 2021.
Yes. Also, to add to that point, Oli, remunerations are very confidential. So ideally, the person that's already working with remunerations, your payroll, is the person that will get that information together and then would pass it on ideally to the person that's going to capture or submit the report on the system. But that information shouldn't be delegated to anyone in the company, because it will cause a lot of issues if it lands on the wrong hand. So ideally, the person that's already dealing with financials and payroll and salaries will be the person that compiles that information.
Okay. Also, do you know when the amendments will be put into the Act? As of July 2020, the Employment Equity Amendment Bill has taken place.
So what we can do is we can share the amendment bill with everyone just to see what the amendments have been in terms of the Act.
And
Sorry, can you
once
hear me?
Yes.
Hi, it's Elsa. So are you saying that an employer who has now less than 50 people don't have to report?
Okay, so we're going to attach the document right now, and if you have access, if you can open
the bill
it.
is not it's not been gazetted yet.
Yes, but it's been published. So it was put out for public comment in October 2018 already. So now all the public comment has been worked on, and hence the bill has been published.
So does it then say, because if you have less than 50 people, you don't have to report?
Okay, so what it's saying is that if your company does not meet the threshold and you don't have 50 employees, the submission process that you did for voluntary submission has been revoked. But if you are doing it for legislative purposes, you will still need to.
So if you have a look at clause 2 of the amendment bill, it speaks to the definition being changed. So the voluntary submission has been repealed, which was section 14 of the Act. And then it says to relieve the burden on smaller companies that only complied for threshold purposes, then they don't have to submit because a certification of compliance will be issued. So now there hasn't been a process as to how or when the certification of compliance will be issued. It could be after this year's submission, it could be prior to that. But I think for companies to be safe and to be compliant, it's advisable to continue with the process this year. Until then they clearly issue a procedure or a process as to when or how those certificates of compliance will be issued to companies that are under 50, that are under threshold, but then submit for triple BE, for tenders, or for voluntary purposes. So yes, that's what the definition of the Act says. It changes the entire submission structure, but it's advisable for companies to continue with the process until then the DOL has clearly stipulated that we will be issuing the certificate of compliance on this criteria, on this date, and they can be accessed on this platform. So for now, yes, that's where we stand in terms of the amendments, in terms of the definitions in the Act.
Okay,
We have
thanks
another.
very much.
You're welcome.
So Lisiwe says, do you have an EA1? We have attached one for you, including temps here. So what we suggest is that all employees complete the EA1 as they receive their appointment letter or employment contract. Then it is done, it's in the file as well. Okay. Should nominations be received first for the election ballot? Do you include all employees on the ballot form? Yes. So before starting your process, you'll look at your employee workforce. How many employees you have, on what level they fall under. So top management, senior management, professional management, skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, or temporary. From that list, then you will send out the ballot forms requesting that your employees elect somebody from each occupational group, each gender, and each ethnic. So it could leave you with 13 people in your forum with your unions and disabled people.
Okay, Rita Horn, is the sector-specific employment equity targets available yet? What needs to be done is we need to check the EAPs for the next year, because currently they're still based on provincial and previous year's targets. So then because now it's more sectoral and not provincial, then they're going to release new targets and new EAPs that we will work from. Hence the comment earlier to say it's advisable to continue the process with what is in place now, because then such things as the sectoral targets haven't been published yet.
But you can still make use of last year's targets as guidelines.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Is everyone good? I hope that was an informative session for everyone to assist you with your submission process.
Yes. Okay, so regarding the EA1, what happens when the temp's contract ends? Do you have to take the EA1 out of the file? Yes, you can take them out of the file, or you can keep their records with whatever record keeping process you have in place, but then they won't be considered when drafting your workforce profile.
Please note your workforce profile is based on the last 12 months. So from the 1st of August 2019 until the 31st of July 2020.
Sorry, maybe I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, in between audits and reports, if you want to report a non-compliance, what would the recourse be in that space?
Sorry, please explain what you mean by if you want to report a non-compliance.
Maybe you experience something that is happening and you try to address it within the company and nothing is being taken seriously, and you want to take the matter further to alert maybe the DOA or any regulatory body around the EE space before a report has been sent out. What sort of recourse does one have in that space?
Okay, so Timba, in that instance, when it comes to drafting your employment equity plan, there is a dispute resolution process that should be in place. Okay, so where, for example, you would raise an issue to your forum representative. Your forum representative has a time frame to report it to the forum, the EE committee. Okay. And then the EE committee has also maybe another 10 days, for example, to take it to the manager, okay? And then management has, for example, 20 days to make a decision to filter it back down to the forum, to filter it back down to the committee. So you need to have such a process in place. And that will also help in terms of accountability. So if you've got a grievance or an issue or a barrier that you're experiencing, you take it to the forum, because it doesn't help you run to DOL or CCMA, because they're going to ask you, did you follow the process? So you would take that grievance, take it to the forum. The forum and the E manager would take it to management. Then management will have to also then make a decision and then give you feedback. And hence the management is also part of the process, and hence they also need to sign off on the meeting minutes and the employment equity plan, which basically says that they are also liable of forming part of the process. So I think your starting point would be to establish what is your company's dispute resolution process. If there isn't one, then that's your starting point. There needs to be a dispute resolution process. Okay, and if you put forth your grievance in writing, it cannot be disregarded. So I think start there, communicate it to your forum to management, and if you don't receive response from management, then you will need to speak to the E manager, because then they are the middleman in this instance between employees and management.
The very last step for taking it towards labor.
Yeah. So if you've exhausted every other avenue, then you would take it to the labor. But alternatively, you need to have a dispute resolution process in place within your company to sort out the issues that may arise.
Okay. May I come in again if there isn't anyone, so that I don't become the only one that speaks?
Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, Temba.
Yeah, I just been elected to be in the forum, and I was new in the sort of space. But in our first encounter with this, one thing that I picked up is, and that was also reiterated in the meeting, was whenever issues are being raised, management sort of took a posture of saying, don't come with specific and talk about specific individuals. This hasn't happened to this person. Speak about what is happening within the company. They wanted to have a sort of an overview of what is happening,
General.
as opposed to drilling down to a specific case of a specific person. So now my question is, how should the languaging should be within these forums when you meet? You're supposed to dwell into nitty-gritties of individuals, or you're supposed to generalize? I'm just asking this because I've realized that in our last meeting, which is about a few months back, that has been a bone of contention in how they were actually interacting with each other. And I want to understand this so that I can be able to address this properly going forward. Is both levels accommodated, or you should just be at a strategic level of viewing how the EE is going within the company, or you should drill down to specific, you could come to specifics when you're dealing with individual issues or that type of thing?
Okay. That's duly noted. Thank you for that, Temba. So as a person that's been nominated to sit on the forum, you are acting on behalf of the department that you're representing, one, but you're also acting as an individual. So it's not per se to say the forum is a platform for general issues. Yes, you can bring forth individual issues, but for example, you don't want to name drop and say Amalia has an issue with her payslip. Your approach should also be, you should just analyze your approach as well to say, I've received communication from one of the staff members in my department saying they have an issue with regards to their payslips. So now that issue is not a EE forum issue. I'm just saying payslips, for example, is not an EE forum issue. Payslips is a account issue. So what they will do is then they will allocate you, because you're representing the employees in essence, it will allocate you to then maybe advise that employee to speak directly to accounts. You get what I'm saying? So the platform, I think what needs to be done in your environment is training. It's diversity training. I think the employees need to be trained. The forum members themselves need to be trained. And then it needs to be made known that this is a platform where you need to bring employment equity related issues is another thing, Timba. You cannot bring tea and coffee issues to the EE forum. It needs to be issues that create, once more, if they create discrimination, unfair discrimination, then it's an issue that you bring forth to the table. So I think it's just a matter of consultation or awareness, as we mentioned earlier. Step two, awareness and communication is important, and your forum is in essence a platform to bring forth any issues. You shouldn't generalize, but your approach maybe should also just be adjusted.
Remember, when you are part of the forum, you represent your department, your occupational level, your gender, and your ethnic. So when we're bringing issues, we've got to keep in mind that we are addressing 13 different ethnics, genders, occupational levels, departments. So that issue needs to, for example, like Molly said, if it's a payslip issue, if one employee has it, how many others have it? So it needs to be an issue that relates to all departments and a bigger picture. Remember, you are working with management to achieve a common goal.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I understand. One thing why I'm mentioning this, me being the outsider before I was elected in the space, there's been this perception about the EE forum being seen not to have tooth or teeth to change things. That's number one. But one wonders, and once I got an opportunity to sit in that space, I realized that there is a problem here technically in terms of how people interact with each other. And I can see that it's because of people are not sure as to how to deal with issues within, if you understand what I mean. And I think, yes, you understand what I'm saying? There is a negative perception about the forum itself. I got in and I realized that, yes, indeed there is, because people seem to talk past each other. One expects to engage at a certain level and the other expects to engage at a different level, which means it's a question of consultation and training in terms of how to address issues, what sort of issues that belong in the space and how to address them. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, no, I get it, yeah.
No, thank you, Temba. What we'll do is after the webinar, we'll be in contact with you and we'll just obviously just elaborate more and see how we can assist in terms of that barrier that you are currently facing as a forum, as a company. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions? Concerns?
So small, if I may ask again, sorry.
Temba, can I ask that we rather contact you after the training session?
Okay,
and
that's
then
fine.
have a
That's fine.
discussion that way?
That's fine. That's fine. I'll welcome it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so what we've done is, should you need assistance with any part of your employment equity process, from what you've heard today and concerns, we've given you a quotation to help you see how the process is set up, and should you need any assistance, we're happy to contact you.
Okay.
Okay, we will send you a message after the training session as well, just to find out how it was for you, any assistance that you needed.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, if there's nothing else, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
yeah,
very much.
so
The link will be on our YouTube page this afternoon if you would like to see the recording again, just for a refresher. Can I please ask that everyone leave their contact details in the chat box? So either your contact number or your email address.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much,
so
everyone. We
much.
appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Enjoy your
Bye.
day.
Okay, bye.
Bye.